เรียนรู้คือการค้นคว้าแสวงหาแล้วก็ค้นหาคำตอบในสิ่งที่เรายังไม่รู้ค่ะ
สำหรับผมมันไม่ได้เกิดขึ้นในห้องเรียนครับการเรียนรู้เนี่ยมันอยู่นอกห้องเรียนอยู่แล้วครับ
การเรียนรู้ก็คืออยู่กับเราตลอดเวลาไม่ว่าเราจะเดินไปตรงไหนก็คือเป็นการเรียนรู้มองเห็นต้นไม้ต้นนี้ก็เป็นการเรียนรู้มองเห็นตึกอาคารต่างๆก็เป็นการเรียนรู้สิ่งที่ทุกคนอยู่ก็คือการเรียนรู้ค่ะ
เรียนรู้จากอินเทอร์เน็ตค่ะพวกวาดภาพก็มีสอนวาดฟรีใน YouTube ค่อนข้างที่จะเยอะเลยค่ะแล้วก็ส่วนหนึ่งจากหนังสือด้วยค่ะ
การเรียนออนไลน์เนี่ยมีข้อดีตรงที่ว่าเราสามารถเรียนช่วงไหนก็ได้
มันจะมีหลายอย่างที่ในห้องเรียนไม่มีการเรียนรู้นอกห้องเรียนมันอาจจะดีกว่าการเรียนรู้ในห้องเรียนก็ได้ครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ I'm Kushma Yotha, your host. Welcome to Thailand Today. COVID-19 has impacted various industries worldwide, including the education sector, to assist those impacted from the pandemic in Thailand. The Asia Foundation, together with the Australian Embassy in Thailand, earlier launched a learning portal called thailandlearning.org. to provide continuous learning resources for the development of Thai youth amidst COVID-19. So in May 2020, we had the opportunity to discuss this initiative with the Asia Foundation. So as a follow-up on the progress of the project, today we will speak to Ambassador of Australia to Thailand, His Excellency Alan McKinnon, and Asia Foundation Senior Program Officer, Dr. Ratana Laut, the latter of whom we spoke to in May as well. So, Swadee ka.
Swadee krab.
Welcome to Thailand Today, both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for asking us.
Well, let's just begin with Dr. Ratana first. So, under the initiative that I understand that you have been traveling quite a lot to many cities to ensure the education of the country. So, can you tell us about what about this, and as well as the rationale behind it?
Yes, as you have said, the Australian Embassy and the Asia Foundation has launched www.thailandlearning.org. Yes. So after the COVID situation is a little bit improved in the countryside, we visited Sarakhampittayakhom schools, particularly Sarakhampittayakhom, to engage with the students there and see how they use the portal in real life. We follow these groups of students to their house, and we ask them what they think about the portal, how we can improve, how they engage with our learning resources, what do they want. So it's really eye-opening experience. Yes.
So what has the education in Thailand been you focusing on, and why is it?
I think most of our education system has focused so much on the content of the curriculum that the students have to memorize so much of the knowledge.
So from now on, no memorizing?
I think you cannot take memorization away from learning. It's part of the puzzle, and what we can do is improve the skills and insights and understanding of that part. Yes.
That's very interesting. Maybe how about Your Excellency? Australia has been, well, before we get into our question, I would like to know, Australia has been a kind of a world famous, popular among the educational students. So how is the situation at the moment?
Well, the situation is very much affected by COVID, of course. We previously had a very large education export sector.
Yes, sir.
And Thailand was an important part of that. It was one of our 10 biggest markets, and played a really important role. Something like 20,000 students from Thailand going to Australia every year, whether it's schools, vocational or university. That's all been knocked back a lot by COVID. So we're looking forward to innovative ways to restart that education industry.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers. So this is a great initiative indeed. So why is there interest from Australia on Thai education? We understand that students want to go there, but right here in Thailand.
Well, Thailand is, first of all, I've said it's a big industry, but Thailand is also a very important partner to Australia. It's a top 10 partners in just about any area you can imagine, whether that is economic, whether that's trade, defence cooperation. So we're close partners. And our two Prime Ministers just last week just signed a strategic partnership agreement. They want to grow that relationship. Without education, there's a big part of the relationship missing. And so, as I've said to you, it's very important, and we want to get all of those Thai students back into Australia. What we find is that the alumni from Australian education institutions, whatever those are, play a very important part in the ongoing relationship. Many of the key drivers of development, whether it's economic or trade, were people who studied in Australia. So they pay a double bonus, really. We want to get more of them back there.
Yeah. But how about maybe, what is the number? How did it decrease from 100 to 0 or what?
Pretty much. Much of this year we've been working with my counterpart in Australia, Ambassador Busadi, to bring back Thai students to meet their families. There's still some in Australia. I personally know some young Thai students still in Australia, but if I had to have a guess, I'd say that number's gone down by at least 3/4. And partly that's students going home, but also, of course, it's students who can't apply for the next year with any confidence yet. So it's a big change.
Do they need to come back home during a period of time?
Well, I mean, if they're young and they haven't seen their families and they're only at school, I think many of the families feel more comfortable if the students are back home with them. So it's not just Australia that has suffered from that. Of course, that's been a feature of the international education industry over the last year. So Australia, look, is a very safe country. Many parents have just been quite happy to leave their kids there, but they like to have them back with their families as well.
In connection to the question just now, so what are the response for this?
Well, our government it's been a COVID response, I'm afraid, rather than an education response. And so we're working very hard to get our COVID infection under control, and we're having a lot of success. We're not quite as advanced as Thailand is, but over the last few weeks we've got down to pretty minimal numbers, almost 0 across the whole country. That allows us to start thinking about ways you can think cleverly about getting students in. My way of thinking about it, if you're a tourist, you don't want to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. But if you're coming for a whole year, maybe 1 week might be okay. So I think state governments are thinking now creatively about how they can open up opportunities for students to come to Australia.
That's interesting. Dr. Ratana, to give us a broad overview on education sector in Thailand and how it's doing, and how could you tell us about what the impact of this COVID-19, as Ambassador was saying?
I think COVID hit us really hard in a way that
Painful.
it changed the way we think about learning. And immediately after COVID has hit us, the Ministry of Education has moved all the learning to online platform, and that makes online platform the epicenter of learning for students. But it also makes us reflect on the reality of the situation in Thailand, because rampant inequality, poverty in the country, not every student has access to mobile phone or computer. And what we have seen is, even if they have cell phone, not everyone has internet access. So they rely on the school as a center of learning to get learning internet from the school. So I think the pandemic make us think critically about the relationship between technology and learning. 1999 Education Act has said that education should be technology should be a part of learning. But for the past 20 years, the progress on that front has been rather slow. So I think this is a wake-up call and an opportunity to think ahead. Yes.
Do you think things are going to get back to normal? If things die down, that's what you have done before and going to be in the future?
What's normal for you? Going back to classroom?
Back to classroom?
I think students already go back to classroom, but they realize that they need to be more alert. They need to be more adept to change. They can't just rely on teachers in front of classroom anymore, because I think yes. And I think they have to wake up to realize that they have to be active. Engagement with learning. Yes.
Exactly. So what is it crucial to ensure that there is continuous education during this trying time?
I think everyone has to help. Parents have to help. Principals have to help. Ministry of Education has to help. Everyone has to realize that learning has to be the center of the attention for students, because if it doesn't mean that if they don't go to school, they can't learn. They can learn with their grandparents, they can learn with their TV. The education sector has worked together quite aggressively during the past 10 months to reach out to online learning platforms across the board. So we are a part of the system. Thailand Learning is a part of the bigger picture. And I think going ahead, everyone has to realize that learning for all also requires all for learning. Right.
All right. Okay, we're going to come back
Yes.
for the second part. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more Thailand Today. Don't go away.
COVID-19 warriors. We will not give up. Thank you for protecting us during the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you to the chefs who kept people full. Thank you to the dancers who helped create happiness in this dark period. Most importantly, thank you, the Thai people who have bravely endured this epidemic together. We will not give up. We can and we will to redefine the future of our nation. Let's join hands, COVID-19 warriors.
Welcome back. You're watching Thailand Today. We continue our discussion with Ambassador of Australia to Thailand, His Excellency Alan McKinnon, and the Asia Foundation Senior Program Officer Dr. Ratana Laut on their joint efforts to assist Thai youth on education and development amid the post-pandemic. Well, we did stop at certain part of it. So when I listen to you, Dr. Ratana, I feel that because you sound like people are going to get back home and study at no more education institute anymore.
I think parental involvement has become more increasingly important for education in Thailand.
Yes.
But that doesn't take away the role of schooling and the role of universities as a centers for exchanges. But then, of course, that exchanges can take place online. But it's really hard to replace face-to-face learning. I think the meaningful engagement and the meaningful exchange when people meet together cannot be repressed, but it's slowed out, definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. Your Excellency, cooperation in education is among important aspects of the bilateral relation with Australia and Thailand. So what are the examples of Australia projects aimed to assist in education sector?
Kun Kusuma, we have a lot of projects, and they're not all government to government. Some of them are university to university, vocational institution to vocational institution, and schools to schools. I'll just give you a couple of examples of successful vocational partnerships that we have. One of them, for example, is the upskilling of vocational education and training trainers, so train the trainers. We also have an ASEAN bridge school partnerships, and these are to bring schools together between Thailand and Australia in this case. We've got 33 of those school partnerships, the students working together, and we promote as Thai teachers to go to Australia to be part of that partnership as well. We're working with OVEC to implement the international skills training course for trainers and assessors. So it's more about working at that trainer and assessor level to raise capabilities rather than working at the ground level to teach the students themselves. And we're also working with the Goethe Institute in Bangkok, for example, to teach STEM skills training to STEM teachers. And so, again, we're teaching the teacher there, but in that important area of STEM skills.
That's the cooperation more, because since this happening, so is it more cooperation needed from many sector?
These are long-standing programs. In some cases, we've been doing them for a decade, but I think there's probably more of a focus on them at this time, especially to the extent that they are able to be done virtually and on digital platforms.
Dr. Ratana, how do you think our education and learning will change this post-COVID-19?
I think people will be more independent on their learning. One of the philosophies that has changed is personalized learning. Instead of relying on teachers or institutions, I think students will realize that they have to rely on themselves and become more independent. But like I said before, that doesn't take away the role of the institutions. Schools and universities can play pivotal roles in nurturing this knowledge and understandings of the world for students. There need to be new way of collaborating between teachers, between academics, between principals to make sure that learning take place. So I think, like I said before, we're learning, pandemic has changed everything. Yeah.
You talk about the responsibility. Do you think how much they can do that?
Who the
student?
Oh, they can do a lot.
Really?
I really strongly believe in the empowerment of the students, and you give them the tools, you give them the guidelines, they can change what they learned about themselves and the world around them.
Yeah, to a certain extent we have seen it, because some of the school, the students come back home, don't even take care of their own self. But now things have changed, and you think how much they can be standing up to stand for such thing?
The society can grow together. I think the society, the media sector can grow with us, with education sector. The media sector can produce better content to improve the quality of learning. And a program like this can be, broadcasted in schools to teach English to students. There are so many opportunities out there available for governments, non-government, embassies, media to work together.
Yeah. It's something like a kind of a vocational kind of thing, manually, instead of classroom.
Yes,
is that
definitely
the way to go?
I think inside and outside classroom, online and offline learning, there need to be an integration between all facets of learning. Yes.
So what are other projects in work for development of Thai students? One of you.
Well, we're working on more and more student and teacher exchanges, curriculum development, industry institution tie-ups. To give you one example that makes sense of that jumble of words, where we've got an international chef program, and so we pick some of your best young chefs out of vocational institutes. We train them up at an international standards with Australian educators, and then they have a qualification that can take them around the world. Thai food is world famous. We make the chefs world famous in their competence too, and so that's going to help when we can get the Thai tourism sector open again.
Okay. So what are some new developments pertaining the learning and education in Thailand?
For us, with Thailand Learning, we are moving forward to increase even more resources on the portal. We are looking forward to make it an application, so it's more user-friendly for students. We are looking forward to partner with ministries, different ministries, education and other sectors in order to improve our content. So that's definitely one way we are going forward to the future. Yes.
What we are talking about now, do we mean about the general public? We talk about general education, or the rich and the poor and the what? So everybody must be able to, because this is going to change lots, add up more for the education and all that. So is there anything, I'm a little worried about the people who are not able to support or to have the education.
I think when you go underground to the provinces, you realize the government has done a lot of things for the people as well. Like the Department of Rice, for example, provided on the ground training for farmers in the COVID era of how they can market themselves, how they can promote online tools. So there are many exciting programs on the ground. So I think many departments realize that after COVID, they have to be more active to reach out. Yes.
It's interesting. Want to add up anything, sir?
Well, I just add that this website, to me, it's a tremendous resource available to students, but the issues have always been the same. There are some students who will access all the resources that are given to them, and there's some that won't, and that's where we have to, the institutions still have an ongoing role, the parents will always have to have an ongoing role, including making sure that the boys aren't just playing computer games on their computers. That can happen too, but it's, if I look back at my own school career and think, I wish they had something like this when I was young. We had to go to the library and get out books, and so there's so much more available now.
Yeah, it's okay because they made you as ambassador. It's okay.
Good point.
This is the last question, but any of you can answer this. How should students adapt themselves for this post-COVID-19?
they have to be independent, I think, and they have to be respectful of diversity of
This is
learning.
difficult.
Yes, they have to strike the balance between relying on themselves and listen to other people, because the opposite extreme of being independent is not going to be conducive to learning. So they have to also learn to respect the communities and listen to the diversity of learning out there. I think that's the post-COVID learning.
But add a little bit, please.
I think that's very good advice. This sort of resource gives them a window onto the world, gives them much more understanding about what possibilities that they have, and I think a greater understanding too of their need to have an education themselves, because the world is changing so fast. The jobs of the future, the opportunities of the future rely upon them having a higher degree of skill. So I think this can play a very special role in teaching them. Now the challenge is to make sure that they've got the resources, the internet access and the handheld devices to be able to utilise this resource.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us, and with all the best for your undertaking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you so much, Ambassador of Australia to Thailand, His Excellency Alan McKinnon, and the Asia Foundation Senior Program Officer, Dr. Ratana Laut, for talking to us about initiatives on the education front and help ensure learning continuity during the post-COVID-19. And that's all for the time we have for today's episode. We broadcast every Tuesday to Friday at 9 p.m. on NBT World and live on YouTube. I'm Kusma Yotasmut.